Welcome to this edition of Michael's Corner. If you like the content that I share here with the news and opinions that I do, like, subscribe, and share with anybody who'd be interested in this type of channel. It really helps me out and it allows me to bring really good content to you guys. Now, today's show is about inflation. Now, inflation, I consider it a bad word because inflation is always bad when prices go up and it's harder to buy things that you need. And a little bit of facts to start us off here. Now, inflation is currently at 5%, which is 4.2%. That's a large increase over last year. Now, this is this is the sharpest rise since 2008. Now, if we don't count energy prices and the food prices, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which is the amount consumers pay overall for goods and services in the economy, has increased, and it's been the largest now since 1981. So we're being hit pretty hard with this. Now, there's a couple reasons for it. Now, the main reason is, well, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a lot of companies that had to close down, and a lot of other things happened. People couldn't go to work, and a lot of businesses suffered. Now, this has been a serious shutdown in the U.S. economy, which contributes to part of what is going on. Now, economists say that this current inflation rate we have is distorted or exaggerated, because they figure, okay, it's because of the pandemic it's gone up so high. But is it the pandemic? Is it really the pandemic? I'll attempt to answer that question. Now, I'm not an expert on the various trends that cause these problems, but one thing is certain. Every time the prices for goods and services increase, they hardly ever go back down once they increase the prices. Everybody knows that. I mean, what happens here is the situation affects the unemployed or underemployed even worse than anybody else because they can't keep up with the prices increase. A lot of people, there should be business raises, there should be raises every year. Let me get it correct. There should be some raises every year to keep up with whatever inflation happens to be there. Otherwise, it's harder and harder every year for people to survive. Now, the problem here is when prices go up, as I said, they stay up. And most often than not, they do not go back down once the prices go up. And another issue as well with the COVID, there is a supply and demand issue. That's a real situation that did happen. A lot of factories were shutting down, a lot of businesses were shutting down, and the goods and services that they made or produced, they couldn't do because they had to close down their shops. They didn't have, the manpower to do their goods or services. And so, the supply and demand issue. So it was harder and harder, definitely during the COVID pandemic, to keep up with the supplies. I mean, I know everybody remembers it because I sure as hell do, where we would go into the store and shelves were near empty because there was just no product there for people. Now, that naturally causes a price increase because of the scarcity of the items. But as I said, is it really because of all of this that the prices go up? Now, let me fully answer the question that I posed earlier, whether higher prices would stay or not. I would say a resounding yes, they will stay up. Because a little earlier I said, if you look back in history, once prices go up, they stay up until the next inflation, in which time they go right back up again. That's a fact. And, it's really sad when you see that, because I feel strongly in my heart that businesses take advantage of this situation time and time again without thinking about whether people can afford their goods or services. But there is a silver lining, because a lot of these companies that are trying to gouge the customers or are trying to raise their prices on a permanent basis miscalculate how much consumers are willing to put up with as far as buying their goods and services. A lot of times what happens is, since they miscalculate so badly, they go out of business because no one wants to pay the outrageous prices that they want to charge. So what does this mean overall? It means that every time we have an inflation situation, businesses try to take advantage of it. Companies don't pay enough to keep up with these wages. The unemployed people or the underemployed people that are barely making it just don't make it. They just can't survive in the situation. And that's just the situation that we always have in this country. Every time something major happens, whether it's a war, whether it's a pandemic, it seems that a lot of the businesses, I understand, I'm a big fan of free enterprise, but a lot of these businesses just take advantage of these bad situations to better fix their profits and their bottom line. And the unfortunate fact about that, and I've talked about employment too, is they're not willing to pay their workers for their additional costs and prices. So they get all the money, but they don't let it go downhill so that the people that are working for them are making the money too. And that I feel is really unfair. That, my friends, is my soapbox for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next section. Hello, and welcome to the questions and answers section of the show. I have a question for you guys today, as I typically do. Today's question is basically directly related to the inflation that we talked about earlier. That question is, how has inflation affected you? Have you had to cut back on things that you normally would do? Have you been able to survive? Have you been able to budget as prices have been going up? If you're a business, have you been able to get your businesses back up and running? Have you been able to get people employed? And overall, how has it affected you? The general question for both groups and all groups is, how have you adapted based on how inflation is affecting us today, now that the pandemic is over? I'd very much like to hear your comments on this and see what you think and see how you have survived. Because, hey, I know I'm trying to survive, and it's definitely hard sometimes as things keep going up on us. And that's pretty much all I have as for our question today. If I have missed anything, or if there's anything about inflation that you'd like me to talk about that I didn't talk about in the previous section, please let me know in the comments, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. As I always say, I read all my comments, and I get back to them as quickly as I can. On to the next section, and I will see you guys in a bit. Bye-bye now. Hi there. My final thoughts for today is us trying to get ourselves back on track with the inflation that keeps hitting us with its ugly head. Today we have to just work harder to balance and budget our money with the little bit we have. We need to really just think about what we really need, what we can do without, and how best to survive until this inflation goes away, if it does. I doubt it, but we can always hope, right? Also, I'm hoping that businesses, take note and realize that we're in really hard situations right now, and that not everybody can afford their price raising and price gouging, and that they really should, just, okay, I understand everybody wants to make a profit, but let's cut everyone a break, because right now we're recovering from this pandemic, and we have a lot of things we need to do to get ourselves back on track as a country. Now, with that being said, what we talked about today, briefly, is we talked about how our inflation rate is 5%, the fact that it's 4.2% increase over what it's been, and that it's been the highest since 2008. It's a really rough time. And that the consumer product interest we also talked about, consumer price index, let me correct myself, has also gone up, and it's the largest since 1981. Right now we're in a really rough situation, and we need to try and do what we can to straighten this out. We also talked about how businesses are raising their prices, and the factual and historical basis that I said was that we hardly ever see the prices go down once they raise. So let's just hope that businesses wake up, especially the ones that try to overprice us, and then they price themselves out of business. It's a bit of a longer final thought, but there's a lot going on right now, and we have a lot to think about as far as how we're doing things today. Now, next week is going to be Juneteenth, question mark. Now, you guys know how I love hot topics. This is definitely a hot topic, and I've got a whole lot to say about it. Please make sure you stay tuned because it's going to be a real interesting episode. With that being said, I want you guys to be safe, be careful, be open-minded, and I will see you guys in the next show. Bye-bye now.